7th of October, 2011. Me and my sister Kelly. 2 hours after this picture was taken, life as I knew it ended. Outside of my military barracks in London, I was struck by a vehicle traveling at 38 miles an hour. The force of the vehicle pulled me beneath, lodging my head and body into its wheel arch. Captain Ireland, my boss at the time, was with me, which is undoubtedly the reason I'm still here today. Once he freed me from beneath the vehicle, he checked for life signs. I was unresponsive and bleeding heavily from every place possible. He did his very best to keep me alive until medics arrived. They had to induce a coma at the scene, and in Captain Ireland's own words,
I remember seeing the doors of the ambulance slam shut. I was sure I'd never see David again. There was no way anybody could survive that.
I'd suffered a severe traumatic brain injury that had with it a mortality rate of 97%. Doctors had given my family little hope of survival, suggesting on numerous occasions that they consider switching my life support off. In hospital, my condition deteriorated and doctors announced that they needed to rush me in for emergency surgery to remove the right-hand side of my skull. They asked my family members to say their goodbyes because it was unlikely I would survive the surgery. And when I did, if they could bring me from my coma, I would be in a vegetative state for the rest of my life. I woke from that coma after 4 weeks, kicking and screaming. My first complaint was to ask the surgeon why on earth he had only shaved one side of my head. Who does that? Demanding he send a nurse down with a set of clippers to sort my hair out. I spent the next 2 months learning to walk and take basic care of myself. And I was then sent home and told to stay there for 8 months, at which point doctors would reconstruct my skull. All I wanted to do was get back to life as I knew it before this had happened. Life hadn't always been smooth. I grew up in London, often in areas where crime is completely normalized. By the age of 24, my closest friend had been imprisoned for a life term. My brother faced a firearms charge. And the few friends I had left were either drug dealers or recreational users. Now, I was scared that a similar fate would find me, and I knew I needed to make a positive change in my life. So on the 17th of May, 2009, I decided to make that change and follow a dream in joining the armed forces. After a year of training, I was posted to Hyde Park Barracks, where I would begin escorting Her Majesty the Queen on ceremonial state occasions. I thrived in my new role, and in contrast to where I'd come from, it was incredible. Within months, I found myself trotting down the Mall, on horseback, behind Her Majesty's carriage, feeling more secure and happy than I ever had. Now, my newfound purpose and ability was snatched from me the night that vehicle hit me. After just 2 weeks at home, I felt useless. And so I moved back to my barracks in London, intending to pick up where I left off. I was in denial at the time, completely oblivious to what had just happened. And I begged the army to let me return to some form of work in the hope that I could show nothing had changed. This was about surviving for me, and for a while, it worked. As a result of returning to work with nothing to protect the right-hand side of my brain, and having refused to give in, I was selected to march the Great Britain flag out at the opening ceremony of the 2012 Paralympic Games in London. There was one problem, though. Days before the opening ceremony, my surgeon called and said, "David, we're ready for you to come in for reconstructive brain surgery." I thought, ooh, that's a problem. A problem because I knew that if I told the army this was happening, there was no way they were going to let me march that flag out. And so I justified it by thinking, well, I'll do what the army has trained me to do, and that's to adapt and overcome in every situation where I need to. And so I told the army, I had a medical appointment in the Midlands, so I needed a few days off from rehearsals. 24 hours after I was released from hospital, I marched that flag out at the opening ceremony. Still wobbly on my feet, but determined not to allow my injury to shape my future in the way it had shaded my past. Now, I'm sure to the millions tuned in that evening, I looked as sharp as ever. But on the inside, I was a broken man, psychologically a mess. I was using alcohol and gambling as a way to cope. Tasks that I was able to do with my eyes closed before my injury were now frustratingly difficult. And I struggled to work 20 hours a week. I was no longer able to fulfill my role as a soldier. And in 2014, I was medically discharged from the armed forces. With no manual on how to live with a brain injury, and having lost a career that meant absolutely everything to me. The anxiety and depression I had long been suffering with, unknowingly since my injury, suddenly was everywhere I turned. And I started to have suicidal thoughts. Now I knew deep in my heart that I was never wanting to take my own life. But in my brain, it was a very different story. It was creating it as an option, and I was powerless. As the days passed, my thoughts got darker, and I got a little bit closer to thinking, well, should I give this a try? I would imagine myself hanging from my wardrobe. Or when putting on my bathrobe in the morning, a voice in my head would suggest that I take the belt and tie a knot, placing it around my neck to see what it would feel like. Or hanging it from my wardrobe to see what it would look like. I confided in no one, which is often the case for people struggling with mental health issues. It wasn't that I didn't want to tell anyone. Honestly, I never once thought to myself, maybe I should speak to someone about this. Now, I was very lucky that my sister Nicola could see that something was wrong. And when the opportunity to work with a neuropsychologist was presented to me, she forced my hand. In 2014, I started working with a gentleman called Mr. Conradi, a great man, but also a neuropsychologist. And one of the first things he'd done was introduce me to something called gratitude and daily reflection. The exercise was simple. At the end of each day, just before I got into bed, I was to sit down and write about my day from the moment I woke up. Every thought, every feeling, what went well, what didn't, the achievements, the failures, the frustrations, and the mistakes. And then finally, I was to list and think of and list 3 things that I could be grateful for in that day. 3 things that were nice about my day, and 3 good deeds that I had done. Now, today I'm grateful, of course, for the opportunity to stand on this stage and address you all. But even more so for the people, most in the audience, who have made it possible for me to be here, because without them it wouldn't be possible. My peppermint tea this morning was nice. And the good deed that I have done today is that in the audience, 6 of my friends have 6 of these journals that I've used over the past 5 years as a gift from me to you, or those that are lucky enough, in the hope that I can help you in your own journeys moving forward with this exercise. Now, I remember asking Mr. Conradi, how is keeping a diary going to stop me taking my own life? It made absolutely no sense to me. He said that if I could journal for 30 days consecutively, I would have the answers to my questions. I was like, really? I didn't believe for a single second that journal was going to change a single thing in my life. And initially I struggled with the exercise. Logically, it was simple. It's a diary. How hard can that be? but in practice it was not. Emptying my mind honestly and openly onto a piece of paper is not always an easy task. My thoughts alarmed me, and at times, much of what was going on up here, I would have much rather have left up there. But it gave me the chance to not only reflect on each day, but more importantly, rethink my approach to the following one by looking at what I could have done differently, allowing me to change the outcome. When I got into bed at night, I suddenly found this reboot button that I would press, drawing a line under that day, knowing that with every new day came a new opportunity and a blank page in my journal where I would have the chance to rewrite the things in my life that I could at least control. I started to become compassionate to myself and then to others and situations I found myself in, grateful for the simplest of things in life. I began having a positive impact on the lives of other people without even realizing I was doing so. On a packed London Underground train on my morning commute, I would give up my seat to the person standing up, attempting to read a book while holding on for dear life, knowing that it was going to make their morning and that book just a little bit better. Or when buying my morning coffee, I would greet the person serving me by using their name if they had it on a tag, and asking them how their day was, how their weekend was, and wishing them well as my card payment was accepted. Slowly, over a period of time, the energy I started to put out into the world began to come back at me. Opportunities were popping up all over the place, and I was having fleeting feelings of happiness and joy for absolutely no reason. Life slowly started to explode into color, and no longer was stress an unavoidable part of my life. I started taking better care of myself too, because I could see in black and white that when I did, not only was I more efficient, but I felt so much happier. Thanks to gratitude and daily reflection, no longer was my injury and its impact on my life a negative thing. I was more creative and efficient than I'd ever been since my injury. And this gave me the opportunity to not only continue to empower myself by looking at sleep and diet and other things, but to empower other people working as a speaker, as I am today. Now, I never decided I wanted to be a speaker. There was no light bulb moment for me. This was one of those opportunities that popped up in my life, and I promise you has snowballed to where I am right now. For the last 18 months, I've been delivering inspirational talks to schools, youth programs, prisoners, and the corporate sector. And more recently, I partnered with Emma Willis, who is the founder of a military charity called Style for Soldiers, who looks after injured veterans, to deliver empowering workshops to people who, like me, have had their lives turned upside down as a result of unbelievable injuries. Now, I never imagined I would have the impact I've had. And in fact, I have to pinch myself just standing here today. To hear primary school children tell me that I'm their role model, and to hear from their teachers that they're giving 110% in classes, having heard me speak, is how? How is that possible? I'm just a normal guy with a semi-normal story. Or to hear that prisoners, having heard me talk, suddenly see that there's another way to go in life, and that maybe they, like me, can carve a new path in their life once they're released from prison. While my hard-won lessons are individual to me, the tools that I have used to find success are not, and can be adopted by each of you, helping you change the lens through which you view your life, enabling you to find meaning, become more compassionate and grateful, and more importantly, experience happiness no matter your circumstance. The current mainstream approach to mental health, for me and many people that I've worked with, is flawed. Truth is, my brain wouldn't allow me to speak out about what was going on, even in my darkest days. And if you look at it from a biological sense, I guess Humans were never created to show their struggles. And I don't believe there's anything that I could have done differently to change that. So let's start approaching our mental health and our lives in general from a position of strength by adopting new tools that are going to allow us to change not only the way we view our lives, but how we live them. So that when we're thrown a curveball, be it a big or a small one, we are able to adapt and overcome. So I ask you all today, what are you grateful for? When you get home this evening, write about your day, picking the things that you're grateful for, the things that were nice and the good deeds that you had done. And give yourselves the opportunity to change the way you view your lives. And the chance for your life to explode into color like mine has. Gratitude and daily reflection are a first step. And if, like me, you're sat there thinking, this isn't going to change my life, then I hope that my story has instilled just enough belief for you to think, well, actually, maybe it can do this, so that you give this exercise a go. Thank you.